Oh, hey, how you guys doing? So I'm just here finishing up a little bit of work, but I got a few minutes and I wanted to take some time to tell you a little bit about the place that I live. Are you guys ready? All right, let's go. So my people, my tribe, the Bitterroot Band of Salish Indians, live here in the Jocko Valley. We've been benefiting for a millennium from our ancestors' past work to maintain a strong connection with this landscape. Now, this was not for, one might think, nostalgic or romantic reasons, but more this was a means of survival. Because when you look around and you think back into the past, there was no convenience stores, no grocery stores, no takeout, no delivery. Your survival depended on your ability to gather food items for survival from year to year. One of the most important parts of maintaining these connections was passing on certain qualities and understandings of the environment. So it's the stories. It's the stories that we hear when we're children. Maybe we learn as we grow older. It's these stories that tell us about the creation of things. Maybe the plants we see around us, the river, the landscapes that we see. It's the stories that describe the origin of these things, the narration of their birth and how they were created and put on this earth. And it's also things such as weather phenomenon, our own feelings that we feel, like love, hate, jealousy. Stories describe the origin of all those things. And it's really the foundation. It's the foundation of our ontological perspective. It tells us what's real. It tells us that these things have life, that these things have feelings too, just like us, and that they need to be regarded in that same manner, to be treated with respect, to be used correctly, to be as simple as asked if we can use them. This framework of environmental ontology shaped our spiritual and ceremonial observances, and they're often narrated in our creation stories. The idea of paying respect to animals, plants, and other items from our environment that we used for survival is a pretty common activity. All done to ensure the future good and fortune in securing food items, all through the maintenance of good relationships between humans, animals, and plants. Now, all that I've been talking about has been situated in the past, and we can't really continue without acknowledging the reality of today, that things have been shaped by contact with outside forces. And these external forces have influenced and reshaped, realigned, and changed many of the ancient life ways and philosophies of the Salish. Things such as the economy, spiritual beliefs, social structures, governmental structures. These have all been influenced by the coming of immigrants to our lands. And I think it's arguable but safe to say with some confidence that the propagation of the telling of creation stories has waned here with our tribe. However, The foundational ontological environmental sustainability concepts persist today. The landscape and the environment are still considered in most aspects of the reality for today. Our identity is still grounded in this specific geographic area and landscape, as many creation stories have persisted, passed on through the generations, developing an understanding that many places are remnants of the activities and occurrences from these creation stories. One consequence of contact with others seeking to influence our ancestors' way of life is that many of these stories were documented that may not have otherwise been passed on from generation to generation. There are many documented creation stories that represent various influenced representations of the original creation stories. As you might expect, all were translated from the Salish language to English, and sometimes interpreted through the lens of the individual writing the information down. For example, in the 1850s, Jesuit priest Gregory Mangiarini was tasked with converting my people to Catholicism. During these attempts, he documented some of the earliest stories describing our understanding of creation. That's not to say that the stories that do exist, that were passed on from generation to generation, are not intact or functioning. It's just a consequence that Mangiarini had an opportunity to note some very important details that began to develop an understanding of the reality and connection the environment has with my people. Most important, he noted stories that described animals as being the original creators and embodiment of the sun and moon. He also documented and witnessed some important norms during his time. In one instance, he writes,
"The worship which our Indians rendered to the sun consisted in raising up towards it a morsel of meat or roots before eating them, and saying, 'Sun, have pity on us, so that animals and fruits may grow abundantly.'"
Moving forward in time, around 1884, an ethnographer, W.J. Hoffman, documented 6 additional stories that were titled Coyote and the Mud Hen, How the Lynx Got a Broad Face, How the Rabbit Had a Cut Lip, The Coyote and the Fish, The Coyote and His Neighbors, and The Salmon and the Wolf. So when you read the words by Hoffman that he interpreted from my ancestors, it becomes pretty clear that there's a theme, that a lot of the stories narrate these acts of dishonesty, disloyalty, and downright cruelty for the most part. And you can see that a lot of it is inspired from hunger, from wanting of things that other people have, jealousy, sometimes outright anger toward one another. And this becomes a pretty prominent part of these stories, and Coyote starts to emerge as a main actor in these stories, who's really deeply knitted into this idea of a person displaying these uncharacteristic behaviors. So he's generally the main player, the one who's causing all kinds of trouble. Next, somewhere between 1899 and 1900, McDermott, who was a school teacher at the government agency here in Arlee, she collected 38 creation stories from my ancestors. And similar to Hoffman, many stories she documented illustrated, again, these undesirable behaviors and misdeeds of Coyote. And all of this starts to yield some important concepts related to an understanding of meaning of some of these creation stories. Okay, so I haven't really told you the full story here. See, I've been talking about all these stories, and I haven't even told you about a single one. Well, there's a good reason for that. You see, it's a pretty deeply held tradition that these stories are only told in a deep winter when all the animals are hibernating, fast asleep for the winter. And it's just out of respect for these animals, because a lot of these stories are you know, they're not very characteristic of I guess what somebody should be like. So they're filled with accounts of dirty deeds or uncharacteristic attributes, and you know, this really kind of lends to the idea of respect, that you don't really want to be talking about all these creatures like that. Get out of here! Get out of here! Get out! So it's pretty important that we respect that tradition, because the thought is that when we're told as children that if we talk about these stories and tell these stories, well, we'll get bit by a snake. And I don't want that. I don't want you guys to have that happen to you. So we respect that. And even more so, we're told that these stories are told deep in the night, the winter nights. So you know, the animals that aren't hibernating, well, they got a chance to be asleep when we're telling these stories too. So really, it's a sign of respect, and again, showing this connection with the animals, and our respect for them. So this Eurocentric view that you sometimes get when you talk about creation stories, this romantic view of nature and of the world, of things around us, it doesn't really reflect the reality that we see in these creation stories. We see that they're really a reflection of the humanness of life, the dangers that we face day to day in nature. So these stories really act as a guide to let us know that, you know, things aren't a Disney movie. This is real life stuff, and these stories provide us with that. So the listeners of these stories can really see that the animals they're pretty much just like us today. The humanness of them is pretty apparent, and the things that we hear in these stories are pretty important, that we understand and know that nature is not some idealized form that we have a relationship with, that they provide for us without consequence or without thought of dealing with them in a way that we would our own human counterparts. But it's just it's a reality that we understand, that the things around us, you know, they're gonna treat us just like our parents would. They're gonna get mad at us, they're gonna scold us, they're gonna make sure we do the right thing and follow the rules.